Alright, that was Fatal Frame 5, the Black Haired Shrine Maiden. So, overall thoughts. Well, the atmosphere was great. I felt they did a really great job setting the whole forest up, and the fog, the trees, the color scheme, everything about that was great. And the design of the houses and the shrines and the levels overall was very well done. I felt they got really detailed with it, and it felt like it had a flow that the other games somewhat kind of lost track of once you started getting really intricate with the designs of the buildings. Overall, very good design, great atmosphere, and they did a great job visually. The graphics themselves were very impressive for the Wii U. I didn't think the Wii U was capable of that kind of realism based on the experiences with the Wii, which kind of was up and down. And it kind of makes me wish that they would do an HD remake of the original games just so that they can look as good as Fatal Frame 5 did. Because it was both anime-like and realistic at the same time, which was really nice. Now the sound was good. I don't think it was as good as some of the other games because they had a lot of distortion elements in the voices. Like you could tell there was a lot of reverb, there was voice doubling, and it kind of confused things at times where I couldn't really understand what they were saying. So that is a challenge, I know, with sound design, but for the most part, it was okay. Overall, it felt like Fatal Frame, and that's what I was happy about. Now the story. The story is the main sticking point with the game. There's almost, when you're playing it, like it feels like there's very little. You're just kind of running through each zone, and you're fighting ghosts, you're capturing hidden spirits for your collection, and the story is there, but it's not very clear what's happening a lot of times. There's a lot of flashbacks with what happened to the ghosts before they became ghosts. There's flashbacks with the main characters. You have Yuri and Miyu and Ren always going in and out of their pasts. And you're wondering, okay, how is this going to play into the game? And a lot of times it only plays through an emotion. It doesn't necessarily translate to something that's going to happen. And that's okay sometimes, but there was just too many instances where we were just watching a movie, and the movie was kind of a movie within a game, and that just kind of didn't really work all the time. Now, as far as the characters, I liked the characters. I felt that they had good character stories, but the characters themselves were a little flat for me. I couldn't really get into Miyu as a character. I felt she was kind of tacked on, almost. Her story was very simple. I mean, yes, it is important to the overall story, but I don't know, I couldn't really get into her. I didn't like her presentation, I suppose you could say. Yuri was obviously the main character of the game. You play as her most of the time. And yeah, she has an overall story, but I actually felt that while she was in the game the most, she actually had the least amount of story. At least that was interesting. Because once you look at it, at the timeline of her story, you just kind of see, oh, well, there's not much there to go on. Then you have Ren. Now, Ren, I thought, was really well done. He wasn't explored enough, I don't think. I mean, aside from his nightmares, there was obviously some more stuff going on with this guy. And he had more experiences that maybe weren't told about in the games. So if they did a sequel with him in it, I would believe it, because there's a lot more to this guy that we just didn't see in Fatal Frame 5. Now, Rui, his assistant, Rui was there, and yeah, they did the whole androgynous kind of thing with her, but I felt like that just played to the anime style of the game. And that was okay. It was a little bit too weird, though, with some of the other character dialogue at times, but overall, it was okay. And I liked her whole relationship with Ren. You know, that was cute. Okay, the Black Haired Shrine Maiden. Um, I thought her design was very good for a kind of creep factor. I felt like there was going to be more done with her. Instead, she's more like the traditional bad guy in a cloak. You know, just has the hood over her face, and you know that's about it. There's not really too much to her design other than that. Yeah, it looks like she's been drowned. She has the red eyes, and yeah, it is kind of scary, but only on a certain degree. If they started doing more like with the Ring Girl or something, where she's like moving in staccato, you know, static motion, you know, that would have been something. But as it is, she just moves slowly. Yeah, she's an instant kill if you get too close. But otherwise, eh. Now the other ghosts, my favorite out of all the ghosts, it's tough because there's many different ghosts in the game. I actually think there's more ghost styles in this game than there has been in Fatal Frame in a long time. Fatal Frame 3 had a whole bunch of different ghosts. Fatal Frame 4 wasn't bad, but I felt like the variety was more varied with Fatal Frame 5. I think the tall woman was probably one of my favorite ghosts, just in her style and her creepiness factor, because she was big and intimidating on a very literal level. You didn't see that in any other Fatal Frame games, so that was impressive to see played out in this game. The bosses were, how to describe them? They were okay. The strategies to fight all of them were sometimes very complex. Other times they were very simple. It just came to be like take steps back and take photos when you can. That was about it. It usually took care of 99% of the ghost bosses in there, as well as the regular ghosts. But when you had to spin around, like the girl who cuts her neck, okay, she was kind of tough. Because she was always teleporting around and you never knew where she was coming from, especially in the surveillance camera levels when she could just disappear into a wall and you couldn't see her, and then she would just pop out when you don't expect it. That was always a real challenge when I was playing. Now the floating maidens who would always go up and down and swoosh in at you. Okay, they were tough, just trying to capture them. But I felt like compared to the regular shrine maidens who would come and they would do all their dances and, you know, swing around across the screen and you couldn't really get a good shot at them, you know, that was really hard. Those are the most challenging, but my favorite, all right, I think we're gonna have to do a tiebreaker on this one because my favorite is actually the kids, because they were cute. I loved fighting the kids. They were just smiling the whole time and they would run and they would have kind of a fun pattern to follow, because you would follow one and then another one would rush by. It was a little bit spooky, but I don't know. It was like almost like a children's program playing when you were playing the game, you know, the scary game. And it just kind of threw me for a loop. It just made me laugh. And the other favorite has to be the falling girl, because she would just fall right on top of you or near you. And I remember when I was fighting her for the first time, I didn't expect her at all. And she did the falling thing. And I remember when she landed on the ground, it was kind of horrifying, but the way it was done, it was almost laughable, because when she hits, it's like, it looked very cartoonish in a way, and I don't know, the sound effect, I think, is what did it for me. And I just started laughing because it was almost like a pratfall, you know, that you would see in a comedy movie when someone just goes, and that just kind of caught me off guard, and I thought that was funny. So I guess my favorite ghosts are funny. All right, the scariest ghost. I think would have to be the researcher guy. He's the one that kind of moves like a wooden figure, and he moves in a stuttering motion. He always kind of creeped me out because he had the most kind of gruesome looking design. When I was fighting him, I always had trouble. Like, there was always a moment when he would get me, and the close-up of it was always very startling for some reason. I think it was just they did a very good job on the whole cut-up, broken look for him. So that, to me, is the scariest ghost in the game. Now, because they broke the game up into levels, the whole game is kind of more streamlined. You don't have a lot of the puzzles and things that were in the original games, like the shuffleboard puzzles and some of the find the key type things. They had a little bit of that, but it wasn't to the same degree. It was almost like a light gun shooter. You know, you kind of are moving around with the camera and taking pictures of ghosts everywhere. And with a little bit of exploration. That's kind of how I felt about it. Was I disappointed? Nah. I mean, it's Fatal Frame, and you had a different control scheme with the gamepad, which was neat, and then you had the LCD screen, so it was like you had a Fatal Frame camera and you were taking pictures. So it just made it different, and I think that was what they succeeded on with Fatal Frame 5, is it was a different experience, specifically designed for the Wii U, and it was awesome. Now, my favorite level, that would have to be the surveillance camera levels. I thought that was really well done, and the creep factor of it when you're looking at the cameras and they're constantly switching. And sometimes you would be playing and there would be things that would pop up that you don't expect. And I thought that was really, really neat. And whoever thought of that was a genius. All right, spoiler alert, okay? The weirdest part of the game, the weirdest part has to be the story of Miku Hinasaki and Mafuyu Hinasaki from the first Fatal Frame game, who make an appearance in the game. The part of Miyu being the daughter of Miku and Mafuyu is a little outrageous because they are brother and sister. So, yeah, the game takes a very uncomfortable turn. You don't really expect it or kind of understand why. But based on what I've read online, the general hypothesis for this is that somewhere at the end of Fatal Frame 3, Miku met with the spirit of Mafuyu, and that's how they... I don't know. It's not really explained at all. Just that it happened at some point, and you kind of just have to roll with it. So that was definitely the weirdest part for me. And really kind of, I don't know, just kind of made me scratch my head more than anything. Because I didn't understand why they went that way. It almost felt like they didn't play the first game. They just had the characters. And then no one called them on it either. No one in the game actually called him on it and said, you know, that's your brother. No, it didn't do any of that. So it was awkward and a little surprising, but hey, that's Fatal Frame. What can you say? Now, my thoughts on what they could do for Fatal Frame 6. Alright, I would like to see some returning characters. I want to see what happened to the characters from Fatal Frame 3. I want to see what happened to the whole Mio and Mayu thing that happened off screen during Fatal Frame 3. And I kind of want to see the whole series tied together in a more cohesive way, and where maybe all of these different adventures meet up and they mean something altogether. Like maybe there's some sort of big bad abyss or curse or something that happened that affects all of this. Like, why are all of these curses happening in all of these different places? Kind of like bring it all together, and then they could always reboot it afterwards if they wanted to. Now, another thought is that they could take it to America, and I would like to see what they do with that. I mean, maybe do it in New York City or maybe LA, one thought I had was do Japantown in San Francisco. You know, there's that whole connection there, and then San Francisco is a very neat location in and of itself, so if they did something like that, I think that would be very cool. Fatal Frame 5 for me would kind of rank a little lower than the other Fatal Frame games. I feel like Fatal Frame 3 was perhaps the best in the series so far. Fatal Frame 4 actually is quite enjoyable. Going back and playing it for the review, I kind of appreciated it more. And I thought that it had a lot of good gameplay elements. You know, it made it fun to play. Fatal Frame 2, I think the original one would probably be my choice, just because I felt like it embodied the best of Fatal Frame. So that would rank a little higher above the remake, just for that alone. As far as gameplay goes, I feel like the Wii remake for Fatal Frame 2 was very good. But overall, it didn't have the scare factor that I think the Fatal Frame games needed. So that's why I kind of rank it a little bit lower. And of course, Fatal Frame 1 is the quintessential Fatal Frame game. So that would definitely be my number 2 spot behind Fatal Frame 3. So bottom on the list, despite the glowing review I gave of it, would be Fatal Frame 2 for the Wii. Just because it was an advancement of Fatal Frame 2, but it wasn't quite the same experience that the other games were. So then it would be Fatal Frame 5, and Fatal Frame 4, Fatal Frame 2, Fatal Frame 1, then topping it all off with Fatal Frame 3, The Tormented. Well, I thought that Fatal Frame 5 was a terrific entry in the Fatal Frame series. I don't think it was a perfect entry in the series. It did have its flaws, but then so did all the other Fatal Frame games. Except for Fatal Frame 3 and Fatal Frame 1, which were kind of perfect, but, you know. But overall, it was good. And I felt like it should have gotten a little more attention than it did. There was no physical release in the US. There was a physical release in Europe, where I got this Project Zero art book and steelbook. But here in the US, we didn't get that treatment. We got a digital-only release. And it's a little unfortunate, but at least we got something, so you have to look at it that way. And I can't wait to see if they do a Fatal Frame 6 for the Wii U, or if they perhaps wait for the next console from Nintendo, which could be even better. I don't know. So yeah, it is kind of unfortunate we didn't get a physical release, but I feel like they could easily go back and like reprint the art books, give us a strategy guide, or do something. Or maybe a commemorative book for Fatal Frame, which collects all the games and trivia and behind the scenes, things like that. That would be pretty cool. But we'll just have to wait to see what Nintendo does next with the franchise. I mean, it could be a VR game, it could be a new handheld game, it could be another Wii U entry. Only time will tell. Overall, Fatal Frame 5 is a terrific entry in the Fatal Frame series, and you should definitely pick up a copy in the Wii U digital store. Again, I'm Zack Birlew, and thank you for watching. Alright, so that was my playthrough of Fatal Frame 5. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you have any questions about Fatal Frame or anything else, just leave me a comment below, and I'll be sure to answer promptly. I have a couple more Fatal Frame videos in the works, so we'll see where those go. And stay tuned to our social media channels for more on that. So if you like this video and like to see more cool stuff, be sure to subscribe to the Babs Do Productions YouTube channel. And as always, stay tuned for more.